I want you to try a little thought experiment with me. It feels a bit like the opening of a spy novel, but just go with it. Imagine you are living in a foreign country.
Okay.
You walk the streets, you buy your groceries at the local market, you pay your taxes, you nod politely to the neighbors. You look like you belong.
But you don't really belong.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Because hidden away in your pocket, or maybe, locked in a safe, you are carrying a passport from a completely different nation, a nation that operates on a totally different timeline and a different set of laws.
Which means you are operating under a totally different jurisdiction.
Right. The local authorities, they can't draft you into their army. You have diplomatic protections they don't even know exist. Your body is here walking on this pavement, but your allegiance and your ultimate safety, it's tied to a capital city thousands of miles away.
That is the classic definition of dual citizenship. And it's a fascinating legal reality, but for our deep dive today, it is the perfect metaphor for the stack of research we have on the table.
We are looking at a collection of sources that revolve around a concept that honestly sounds a bit radical, maybe even a little escapist when you first hear it. A heavenly citizenship. We're analyzing the New Testament book of Philippians, specifically chapters 3 and 4, along with some heavy-duty commentaries.
And a really interesting case study that brings it all down to earth.
Yeah, from the Philippines.
But before we get into the theology or the philosophy, we have to set the scene, because context changes everything here. We are looking at a letter written by the Apostle Paul.
Right?
Now, typically, when people write about joy and peace, which are the main themes here, they are usually in a comfortable spot. They've got their latte, they're sitting in a nice chair.
Right, looking out at the ocean, feeling zen.
Exactly. But Paul isn't at a retreat center. He is in prison. And not a modern prison with a library and a gym.
Mm.
We're talking first century Roman imprisonment. He is likely chained to a guard.
So he creates this content while sitting in a dungeon.
He is facing an uncertain future, very possibly execution. And yet, the data from the text shows that he isn't writing about despair. He's writing about a strategic method for overcoming anxiety.
Which feels completely backward. I mean, if I'm in prison, I'm not writing about joy. I'm writing about bail. I'm writing appeals. So our mission today is to figure out how he did that. We want to extract the specific secrets. And the text actually uses that word secret that allows someone to function as a citizen of heaven while they're still stuck here.
It starts with defining that status. What does this citizenship actually look like in practice? Is it just a metaphor, or is it a legal standing? The sources give us a really visceral illustration of this from the life of a man named Dr. Thomas Lambie.
This story is wild. I really dug into this one. So picture this. It's the early 20th century. Dr. Lambie is a medical missionary to Ethiopia. He's not just passing through, he is committed. He has this massive vision to build a mission station, a hospital, schools, the whole 9 yards.
But he hits a massive bureaucratic wall.
A huge legal wall. Ethiopian law at the time was very strict. Foreigners could not own land, period. No exceptions.
So he has the money, he has the vision, but he has the wrong passport.
Exactly. So normal logic says you rent. Or you lobby the government. Or you just pack up and go home. But Lambie does something that I think most people today would find unthinkable. To get the land, to serve these people, he hands over his U.S. passport.
He creates a stateless moment for himself.
He literally renounced his American citizenship to become a citizen of Ethiopia. He swapped allegiances because he couldn't accomplish his mission while holding on to his safety net.
And the sources use this to explain exactly what Paul is getting at in Philippians 3:20. The verse says, "For our citizenship is in heaven." The argument is that, just like Dr. Lambie became an Ethiopian to serve his purpose there, a believer is technically a naturalized citizen of heaven.
So even though they are physically here, their real passport is held somewhere else.
Precisely. And that changes the rules of engagement. If you are a citizen of heaven, you are legally a sojourner or a pilgrim here. You are passing through. You respect the local laws. Sure, you pay your taxes, but you don't look to this world for your ultimate security or your identity.
And the sources draw a pretty sharp line in the sand here. It's not just some vague everyone is on a journey idea. They contrast citizens of heaven with a group the text calls enemies of the cross.
That is a heavy label, enemies of the cross.
It is. It sounds aggressive. When I first read that, I pictured people with pitchforks attacking a church or some angry mob.
But that's not it at all, and that's a crucial distinction in the text. Philippians 3.19 describes this group not by their violence, but by their mindset. It's an internal description. It says their God is their belly, they glory in their shame, and they set their mind on earthly things.
God is their belly. That's such a strange phrase. Does it just mean they like to eat?
Well, it's broader than food. It's about appetite, impulse. If you are a citizen of the earth, your primary operating system is self-gratification. You want it, you take it, whether that's power, pleasure, status, or, yeah, food. The source material points out that for this group, the horizon ends at death.
So the enemy of the cross isn't necessarily a villain in a movie. It could just be a regular person who is living purely for the immediate, someone who thinks this life is the only payout they're ever going to get.
Right. It's a focus on the material world as the final reality, whereas the citizen of heaven plays the long game, and I mean the really long game, which brings us to the first major benefit of this passport, the solution to what psychologists call death anxiety.
This is the big one. Most philosophies, they try to help you cope with death. You know, it's the circle of life or you'll live on in memories. But the source material claims this citizenship offers something much more concrete.
It points to Philippians 3.21. The text promises a physical transformation. It says Christ will transform our humble body to be like his glorious body.
And this is where the research threw me a total curveball. To prove this point about Christian hope, the commentary quotes an atheist.
Yes, the French philosopher Luc Ferry. He wrote a best-selling book called A Brief History of Thought.
I found this fascinating. Why is a Bible study quoting a guy who explicitly says he doesn't believe in God?
Because Ferry is intellectually honest. He analyzes different worldviews to see how they handle the fear of death. And he admits that while Stoicism or Buddhism might tell you to accept death as a return to nature, like a drop of water returning to the ocean, Christianity does something different.
That drop of water analogy is interesting because in that scenario, the drop still exists, but it's not a drop anymore. It loses its identity.
Exactly. You merge into the whole, you disappear. But Ferry points out that Christianity promises the definitive victory of personal immortality. He stresses that word personal. You don't merge into the cosmos. You remain you. You get an upgrade, not a deletion.
So even the skeptic admits, if you want a worldview that actually beats death rather than just managing the fear of it, this is really the only game in town.
That's the logical conclusion he comes to. And for you, the listener, that's the foundation of this whole mindset. If death isn't the end of your file, if it's just a transfer to your home country, then the ultimate existential dread is taken off the table.
It changes the stakes. If I know I'm going to survive the crash, I don't have to panic when the turbulence hits.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we've solved death. That's great for the long term. But what about Tuesday? What about the stress of deadlines, bills, difficult bosses? We can't just say, well, I'm going to heaven someday and ignore that my heart rate is 120 right now.
And Paul knew that. Remember, he's in that prison. He's not stressed about traffic. He's stressed about whether the guard coming down the hall is there to hand him bread or execute him. And yet right there, he drops a command in Philippians 4.4. Rejoice in the Lord always.
The sources emphasize that word command. It's an imperative. It's not, hey, if you're feeling up to it, try to have a good day.
No. It implies that joy, in this specific context, isn't a feeling that happens to you. It's a discipline you deploy. It's a strategic choice.
But how? If I'm freaking out, I can't just flip a switch and choose joy. That feels like toxic positivity. Just smile.
It would be if Paul didn't give the method.
Right.
It doesn't just say be happy. He gives a formula in verse 6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God.
Okay, let's break that down. Be anxious for nothing sounds impossible. But the formula is prayer plus supplication plus thanksgiving. Supplication is just like asking with urgency, right?
Yes, help me now. But the linchpin, according to our analysis, is the with thanksgiving part. That is the variable that changes the whole equation.
Why is that the key?
Because usually we thank God after the problem is solved. Thanks for the raise, or thanks that the medical test came back negative. But Paul is saying to use thanksgiving while you are presenting the problem.
So I'm bringing the anxiety to God, and at the same time, I'm thanking him.
You are thanking him for the answer before you see it. It's an act of trust. It's saying, I know you have this handled, even though I can't see the solution yet. That shift in perspective is what breaks the anxiety loop.
And the result of that formula isn't just feeling better. The text uses a very specific image in verse 7. The peace of God will guard your hearts and minds.
And let's geek out on the Greek for a second. The word used there for guard is Forays.
Foray sounds serious.
It's a military term. It literally refers to a garrison of soldiers.
I love that image. So anxiety is trying to invade your mind. It's trying to storm the castle, break down the doors. And the peace of God isn't some soft, fluffy cloud that floats in. It's a SWAT team.
That's exactly the picture. It's an active defense system. When you use the formula prayer, plus Thanksgiving, God deploys a garrison to stand guard at the door of your mind. They check IDs. They stop the anxiety at the perimeter.
So we have the defense system that guards us from outside attacks. But the sources also talk about an offense. It's not enough to just block the bad stuff. You have to actively curate what you let inside the perimeter.
This moves us to Philippians 4.8, the mental filter. Paul writes, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, think on these things."
It's a list of virtues, but the sources note something interesting here about what Paul didn't include.
Right. At the time, the Greek world had 4 cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, courage. Paul skips those. He creates a uniquely biblical list. He focuses on things that are lovely and of good report.
And this feels so painfully relevant to right now. The source material actually brings up clickbait and modern media.
It does. It talks about how we are bombarded with stories about the salacious problems of celebrities or the latest catastrophe. The algorithm is designed to feed us the cheap, the scandalous, and the terrifying.
I mean, that is literally the business model. Keep you angry, keep you scared, keep you scrolling. And if you're a citizen of heaven, you are constantly fighting against that current.
The source makes a profound point here. If the mind is educated to contemplate heavenly things, it won't be satisfied with the cheap stuff.
It's like changing your palate. If you get used to eating high-quality, nutritious food and then someone hands you a greasy, stale burger,
You realize it's garbage. You don't want it. It doesn't taste good anymore.
So the strategy isn't just don't look at bad things. It's fill your mind with such high-quality truth that the bad stuff loses its appeal.
Exactly. You crowd out the anxiety with quality content.
Now, speaking of things that get taken out of context, we have to talk about Philippians 4.13. You see it on sneakers, on gym walls. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Usually interpreted as, I can win this football game or I can bench press this truck.
Right. The ultimate achievement verse. It's the hype song. But our deep dive shows that is, well, it's completely wrong.
It's not about achievement. It's about adaptation. The context is contentment. Paul is writing about how he has learned to be abased, meaning hungry and suffering, and how to abound, meaning having plenty.
So when he says, I can do all things, he literally means I can survive starvation in a prison cell just as much as I can handle having a feast.
It means his internal state is independent of his external circumstances. That is the secret. He isn't reactive to his bank account or his comfort level. He is steady.
And speaking of bank accounts, the source material throws out a warning here that I think trips a lot of people up. It suggests that prosperity might actually be more dangerous to your faith than adversity.
It's a counterintuitive thought. We usually think, if I just had more money, I'd be less anxious.
Right, money solves problems.
But the source quotes Ellen G. White, noting that the person who is restless, seeking this and testing that, is always complaining of disappointment.
When we have too much, or when we are constantly chasing the next upgrade, we tend to forget we need a passport, right? We get too comfortable in the foreign country.
We think we're self-sufficient. But when you're in prison like Paul, or when you hit a wall like Dr. Lambie, that illusion of control vanishes. You know you need help. The secret of contentment isn't having everything you want. It's realizing your citizenship provides everything you actually need.
I want to ground this in a real story because all this theory is great garrisons, mental filters, passports, but we need to see it in action. The outline brings us to the story of a man named Rene Tucaldo.
This comes from the mission story source, and it ties perfectly into the idea of being a role model.
So Rene grew up in the Philippines, and as a kid, he looked around and noticed something. He saw that the Seventh-day Adventists in his province seemed to be the rich ones. They had the big rice farms.
So his motivation for joining the church wasn't spiritual, it was economic.
Totally. He thought, I want to be rich, so I'll join the rich people's club. He gets baptized at 12. But, spoiler alert, the prosperity gospel didn't pay out.
In fact, it went the other way. His family cut him off because of his new faith. He had to quit school. He ended up working in the rice fields, bitter and angry.
So by 16, he's done. He leaves the church. He dives into what the source calls the worldly life, drinking, smoking, gambling. He becomes an enemy of the cross, to use that earlier terminology.
Because he was setting his mind on earthly things.
Yeah.
He wanted the payout now.
But then, a couple of years later, a guy named Rodel shows up. Rodel is a missionary. He goes to Renee's house. Now, you'd expect Rodel to come in with a Bible and a lecture, right? Renee, you've strayed. Get back in line.
But he doesn't.
Mm.
And this is the key to the story. Rodel simply asks, my friend, come fishing with me.
Fishing.
Just fishing.
Right.
He built a friendship. He showed what the text calls gentleness. Philippians 4:5 says, let your gentleness be known to all men. Rodel didn't argue Renee back into the faith. He loved him back into it.
And it worked. Renee eventually returned, not to get rich, but because he saw something in Rodel that he wanted. He saw that peace. And Renee actually went on to become a leader in the missionary movement himself.
The lesson there is that citizens of heaven make the best citizens of earth. When you aren't fighting for your own status, when you aren't anxious about your own survival because you know your future is secure, you have the capacity to be gentle.
That's a powerful connection. If I'm not freaking out about my own life, I have the bandwidth to just go fishing with someone who needs a friend.
Exactly. You can afford to be generous because your resources, your joy, your peace aren't limited to this world. You have an unlimited supply coming from your home country.
So let's try to summarize this. We've been building a profile of a heavenly citizen over the last 15 minutes. Let's lock it in.
Right. So number one, they play the long game. They anticipate a physical resurrection, which takes the sting out of death.
Number two, they use gratitude as a weapon. When anxiety attacks, they counterattack with thanksgiving, bringing in that garrison of peace.
Number three, they have a strict mental filter. They dwell on the true and the noble, ignoring the clickbait and the cheap stuff.
And number four, they have learned the secret of contentment. Whether they are abased or abounding, they are steady because their strength comes from a different source.
And finally, they are role models of gentleness. They attract others not by preaching at them, but by living a life that makes people ask, why are you so peaceful? What do you know that I don't?
It's a high bar, and honestly, it can feel a little intimidating. I look at that list and think, man, I fail at the mental filter part every time I open my phone. I fail at the anxious for nothing part every Monday morning.
Which is why I want to leave you with one final thought from the source material. It addresses exactly that feeling of not measuring up.
Let's hear it.
The quote is, the more we dwell upon our own imperfections, the less strength we shall have to overcome them.
Wow. The more we dwell on our imperfections, the less strength we have. That is counterintuitive. Usually self-help says we need to focus on our flaws to fix them.
But the source suggests that self-focus is the trap. The key to self-improvement isn't obsessing over your own failures. It's looking entirely away from yourself to that higher citizenship.
It's the concept of becoming what you behold.
Exactly. If you behold your own failures, you just get more failure. You spiral. But if you behold the king of that heavenly country, you start to look like a citizen.
That is a relief. It's
Yep.
not about me trying harder. It's about me changing my view.
Check your passport, remember where you belong, and keep your eyes on the king.
Well, there you have it. A crash course in heavenly citizenship. We hope this deep dive helps you navigate your week with a little more peace and maybe a little less anxiety. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.